I know there was a lot of research that went into sort of the background of what would be in the play. Could you talk to us a little bit about how you got all that research and how you came up with the storyline?
Well, I can talk a little bit about the research, but actually the researchers would probably be better to talk about the research. But briefly, these fantastic human beings right here have a wealth of life experience. We all have a wealth of life experience, of course, but their programs of research are around dementia, changing the culture of care, critiquing biomedical approaches to dementia care. And so given all of that experience and all of that research, that was our beginning point. And we were all keenly interested to critique, just as Pia and Sherry had talked earlier, critique those sort of dominant tragedy discourse. But we also met with people with dementia and heard their stories, and met with family caregivers, family partners, and heard their stories. Each of us as artists also have a variety of different experiences with people with dementia. So the combination of all of that informed our creative process. And we began by improvising, and a lot of what the play, many of those individual scenes actually came from improvisation. Part of that was to get to know the other people's stories and to understand our own stories differently. And then from there, as the playwright, I would sort of select particular bits, begin to string them together, begin to kind of develop particular characters, begin to fill in the gaps with specific things that I was writing, but always in conversation with our own community, with people with dementia and with family care partners. So we would, throughout our process, we would bring it back to people with dementia and care partners and say, what's going on here? Does this resonate with your experience? How is this reflecting, does this bring up any concerns? Is this surprising? Is this exciting? Is this interesting? All of those things, which would again inform our continued ongoing creative process.
We actually worked with Julia for about a year before we even brought the actors in, going through transcripts of research and deciding really what themes we wanted reflected in the play. So it wasn't until we had at least some sense of what we wanted the focus to be of the play before we actually brought the actors in.
My original question was also about the process and hearing a little more, and I'm wondering how closely you followed the transcripts. Did the script, are they literal words of participants in your research, and what was the interplay like between listening to interviews and then staging them?
Yeah, so we had these transcripts that were from interviews that were carried out separately with people living with dementia and also with their families and caregivers. And so we went through those transcripts and circled, particular phrases that we wanted to explore further, and explored those through improvisation. And then, as Julia said, put together the storyline. But those phrases and sentences are still in the script. They're dotted throughout. You hear them. They're repeated by different characters because it affects us all one way or another. So yeah.
And in addition to the individual transcripts, there were broader themes that informed the development of the play from work that we've done together and also independently. And there were probably 3 dominant themes that informed the development of the play. One certainly was relationality. About bringing relationships to the forefront, about interconnections between people and environments, also recognizing the importance of all that the person with dementia brings to those relationships. So all of those interconnections are so critically important and need to be central to how we approach caring. Another theme was how ill-fitting the regulatory landscape of long-term care is with relational caring. So all of those policy absurdities came out of research that we've done. And embodied selfhood is another theme that was quite dominant, which is about recognizing the importance of the body for self-expression. So really challenging the idea that cognition alone is what connects us to the world. So, and it challenges this by capturing how embodied self-expressions, sociocultural dispositions are so fundamental to how we express ourselves, so fundamental to reciprocal engagement and interdependence. And I think that the lobster trap scene beautifully captures that this is an embodied memory, and it doesn't have to be cognitive, but that it continues to be a part of her being. So those are some broader themes that inform the development of the play.
I think for us being researchers too, we've been very frustrated at the inability of our current traditional ways of sharing research results in terms of changing the culture of dementia care and really making people think about some of the inhumane things that we do. And so what we wanted to do is look to storytelling through theater to be able to share our one story or several stories about how we'd really like to challenge the dominant tragedy discourse around dementia and start to think about how we might create a better culture that would better support all people living with dementia.
So the scenarios that were played out on stage, where did you get that material? Were they specific things that actually happened or just based on your research?
We gathered a number of different stories from a number of different places. So we held focus groups with people with dementia and their family members. And we used those as our foundation to be able to improvise. We also brought our own stories. We all in different ways have, as Mary Ellen mentioned, different kinds of experience with dementia. So as we were improvising with the transcripts, the improvisation was partly a kind of exploration, like getting to know the stories of other people, but also to get to know our own stories and get to know each other. And then based on those improvisations, as the playwright, I was documenting everything and then started to kind of choose different bits. So everything that you've seen, I think there's one scene that I pretty much made up because we had a dramatic hole. But otherwise, you know how you do that. But pretty much everything else, everything is based in some way on a story told to us by people with dementia.
In our first few months together, the researchers and the cast and Julia, we all played together. We were one family, really, and we did improvisations together. We worked together in a very playful, inclusive, loving way, and we were able to learn not only just the cast stories, but also the stories of the researchers. And, of course, we all had the transcripts that the researchers and families with people living with dementia, with memory loss, had also provided. So it was a very communal effort and quite exciting. And there wasn't really the division that one might think between artists and researchers.
For me, working on this, what I brought was my own story about my dad. And I wanted it to be representative of how funny and energetic he is. And so I get to play a female version of my dad, which is really fun.
As a researcher who's been doing research for a very long time, it was a very cool way to delve more deeply and understand the stories told to us by people living with dementia and their family members and healthcare professionals, rather than hearing them or reading about them. What we were able to do was actually play with them with this brilliant cast, but also use the music as a way to engage with those stories in a very different way, which provided us with a richness to understanding those stories that I don't think we could have got at any other way. So it was really quite a brilliant experience for all of us to have. Any other?
I have another question about kind of the production process. There's a bit of an echo here. So when you were getting feedback from stakeholders, whether it were folks with Alzheimer or folks with dementia or people, their caregivers and whatnot, what did that process actually look like? Like, was it staged readings? Did the actors come in beyond just giving generalized feedback?
Yes is the short answer. We had a wonderful opportunity to spend a day with people with memory loss and their caregivers, and we split up into groups. We all had visual artists with us, and we spent the afternoon creating and talking, and that was amazing. And then we also had at least one trip into a long-term care facility, and just sort of hung out. Yeah, those were my recollections. It was really, I think we all, unless you have up close and personal relationship with somebody who is dealing with memory loss, you have preconceived notions about what that looks like. And so being able to go and sit and chat to people and the people who were living with them was, it was very eye-opening. It was humbling in many ways. It was a whole lot of fun. Unexpectedly, I will speak for myself, an awful lot of fun. And it was hugely important to I'll speak again for myself, for creating characters and telling this story. Anyone else? Go for it.
And so we were making art, and the art that we were making, each group was creating a poster that was based on what our friends living with memory loss wanted the world to know about them and their life. So, you know, those themes, those things that came out, when we went back into the creation process, we could take those experiences we'd had and those conversations we'd had and feed those back into the script that we were developing.
And just in terms of the how we actually brought the script itself, what Susan and Tim are talking about is sort of how we came to know those stories and connected with people with dementia. And those things certainly informed the story itself. But then as we were developing the story, we put what we were experimenting with in front of people. And it took different forms depending on where we were in the process. So when it was early in the process, it was extremely fragmented. It was very playful. None of it really linked together in any way. We had a scene, we had a song, we had an improvisation that was totally half-baked. We had something that we did the day before that we just kind of threw together, and to see how people were responding and what was resonating with people. We took we did a similar kind of talk back to this. People also wrote down some of their comments. And then as the playwright, I took some of that away. I took all of it away, filtered through it, reflected again on what are we trying to do here? What are our goals, for lack of a better word? And how can we kind of connect these things together? Started to write things down, pull out particular scenes that were particularly strong, started to form it. We worked together as an ensemble. And then again, we presented to an audience, and it was just a little bit more refined. Still had tons of holes. The people that we were inviting were very generous and kind. We were very clear that this is raw, that we are not presenting anything pretty at this point. We're really looking for is there anything that's provoking you? What's challenging you? Is this speaking to your experience? And then using that to continue to inform the play. There were scenes that people loved. They thought it was hilarious, and we just actually ended up cutting them because, you know, yes, maybe it was hilarious in that particular moment, but did it actually help the story? Did it help us develop that particular play? How can we get that hilarity in other ways? So it wasn't just about, do you love it? It really was about, is this resonating with your experience? Is this challenging you, etc.?
I was wondering how you found the balance between making it very informative and very emotional at the same time.
I think, well, the work that the researchers brought to the process, and also each of us have our own experience with somebody living with memory loss. So I think to bring that work, but it's a story. So you want to tell a story. So you're all here to hear a story, a couple of them. So I think we really wanted to make sure that that blended well with all that work that these guys did. It was incredible to have that material. Yeah.
Thanks for a great play again. I have a quick question about just the content. The disease, obviously, for families is devastating. But one of the things I love about the play is that you weave joy into your story, and as an audience, I know we really felt that. And I was wondering, I'm not sure who wants to answer that, but just about the research and how that came out, or how the actors interpreted those moments. It was so effective and I think important when you tell that story, so.
Well, I think for me, the people that I have known that live with memory loss and dementia, there is often a lot of humor, and not always, but, and I just think the idea of connecting with a human being is a joyful thing. And I know that this cast, we had a lot of fun and playfulness in the process, and we wanted to make sure that it wasn't just heavy, sad, because life isn't like that. And when we worked with some people we had this great day where we worked with visual artists and people living with dementia and some of their caregivers and loved ones. And we spent the day with them and we created these beautiful pieces of art. And it was about how they wanted to be seen in the world. And I'll always remember at the beginning, we sat around the table and we were just meeting each other, and this one gentleman said, you know, we're not just sitting in a chair drooling and, you know. And it just struck me. It's like, no, there are people around the table. One woman had a blog. This gentleman was full of life. Another man played hockey every week. So I think it's really important that layer of joy was very, very important to all of us and the researchers and what they've seen when they've done their research with folks. Yeah.